Welcome everyone to Beacon Hill Update. My name is James Arena-DeRosa. I am the state representative for Sherburne. We're going to be doing this show about every quarter. I'm actually going to invite Sherburne residents to participate with me in this show. Today we have a guest, Jeff Waldron, who is a select board member. He's going to talk a little bit about himself before we start the show. But let me just tell you what the show is about. I invite anybody in Sherburne, if you want to join me on a quarterly show, to call my office or email me at james.arena-derosa@ma.gov. Or you can also call the office, and we'll put that number, 617-726-2810. We'll do an overlay on that. But the idea is it can be any issue as long as it has relevance to both state and local government. Or local issues. And if it's something international, it probably doesn't fit. If it's something hyper-local, it's just Sherburne, doesn't fit. Not that those issues aren't important, and maybe there's other shows that you come here on Dover Sherburne Cable and do something with them. But for this show that I'm going to be doing here every quarter, those are the broad parameters. But other than that, it's really wide open. I've had a variety of topics in other towns, and I'm looking forward to doing this show here. It's an honor to serve the residents of Sherburne. I live next door in Holliston. And why don't we jump in? And Jeff, before we start the show, why don't you just maybe for a minute tell them who you are, a little bit about your background here in Sherburne.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Waldron. I've lived in Sherburne really about 30 years, I think it is. My day job now is working at Mass General, leading a bipolar action network. And I was 6 years on the advisory committee in Sherburne, which is the finance committee in town. And I'm now running for my third term on select board. Sure. So I'm a glutton for punishment.
Great, thanks. And I've enjoyed getting to know Jeff, and I'm looking forward to working with you more in the years ahead. So Jeff, we have had some conversations. We've been talking about the value of regionalization. And Sherburne's actually done some amazing things, and that's what we're going to talk about in the show, both some things that have happened and potential. So why don't you just start us off? What are some things that we already know Sherburne is doing and doing a great job with?
Well, a lot of towns have done, one of the early stage collaborations was regional schools, and that was huge because in a town like Sherburne, something like 65% of our total budget is schools, it's education in a small town with not much business besides residential tax revenue. So schools provided a great model for regionalization efforts, but we've done a lot of other things. I think and we maybe talk about it in a minute, we just joined a Holbrook Fire and Emergency Rescue Dispatch, which we'll talk about in a few minutes.
You can show that's good.
Go into that now. So
sure.
we had a problem in Sherburne where we have police officers and we have dispatchers, but dispatchers was a lower paid job, and we were losing employees all the time, and we were spending police officer overtime to cover the dispatch role because we couldn't always source them. And so the state created a fund and provided some state funding to start it up, and they're creating a series of regional dispatch centers. We're a part of one that's in Holbrook, and it's been absolutely terrific. They're very high quality. Not only has it greatly reduced our costs, and the cost was phased in, we got some capital up front to be part of the network, and we're now saving about a minute of time for our responders to reach an emergency scene. So it is not only reduced cost, but it's greatly improved the emergency services.
That's great. And I know there's been sort of a long-term cooperation, especially in the fire departments in the region. And I've learned something recently, and I want you to talk a little bit about it, the jail diversion program.
Yes, yeah.
I was talking with Chief Galvin about this.
Yeah,
and it's fascinating to me. You think of police and police response, and it's not like occasionally there might be a bank robbery or some kind of incident like that, but more often than not, I think some of the stats for our region, 2 out of 3 responses from the police are actually mental health related.
Yes.
And so it's more and more important that there's cooperation and collaboration around mental health. And I was just fascinated with learning that, and also about this program that we're trying to get more support for at the state. Tell us a little bit about how that works in Sherburne, and I know that's also in cooperation with some other towns.
Yes, it's in cooperation with 2 other towns, and we share a counselor, a psychiatrist counselor, who's particularly effective at intervening and sort of taking a situation from being out of control and providing counseling services so that people that are troubled, whether it's mental health or other issues, can be diverted and counseled in such a way that the situation doesn't escalate and result in jail time or other negative consequences. But we share this person who's terrific, I'm told, and it's 2 other towns. And the issue they're facing right now, though, because it does save quite a lot of, and jail time is expensive also.
Absolutely.
So, but it was funded by a grant. So we're in a situation right now, because I work in mental health at Mass General. I talked to the Lieutenant Ted Stone today about maybe finding funding because the grant's about to run out. So we're going to have to look at whether each town can fund the program together.
And it's a great investment. The governor cut it in her budget, and I don't understand why. We tried to put some back on the House side. I advocated for that. But it's such a good long-term investment. And it's interesting talking to the chief because he said at first, some of the officers were a little like, well, and now they welcome the training, they're learning more. I mean, and sometimes we'll say, gee, I think we need the ride-along on this one because it'll help bring the temperature down on an incident. It's really worked out well and been good, so hopefully it's a program that's
good, not just for the individuals involved, but for families and everything else too. It's a really a mental health intervention.
The support they need, right? Which is great. There's a couple other we'll get into some other details, but there's a few other programs that Sherburne does regionally and do them well. And
well, we shared, we're a small town, so we a lot of our jobs are really part-time, so we now are sharing a veteran service agent. We had a very strong veteran service agent, but the state mandated training for veteran service agents, and it was fairly expensive to get trained, and she just wasn't willing to go. It was a volunteer position, and she just wasn't willing to do that. So we're now sharing, I think it's with Holliston, a veteran service agent, and we're doing the same thing on the sustainability coordinator. We're trying to apply for grants for energy saving programs, and both for the community buildings, but also for educating residents about sustainability. So those jobs are ones that require specific expertise, so the talent pool isn't huge. So it also helps to have a regionalization effort because it's sometimes hard to source candidates.
Find people, know for sure, and we're going to get to some of those other benefits we've talked about. It's interesting for me. I mean, Sherburne just celebrated its 350th, Holliston's 300th, and I say sometimes, we act like those lines were drawn 300 plus years ago, and it takes me 5 minutes to get to Sherburne from my house, but we act like it takes all day and a horse to get there. I think we could be doing a lot more, and I'm actually really pleased at how much Sherburne does. It's really quite exciting.
Put in a roundabout to make it easier for you now.
All good. But let's shift a little, Jeff, because we talked about the cost savings, which is obvious. But as you just mentioned and some other things, there are a lot of other benefits to regional collaboration that might not be obvious right away, but really have been helpful for the town. Can you talk a little about some of those?
It's really key for all towns, I think. First of all, like I said, because some of these professionals in sustainability, you might need an energy expert. You may need in health agent, water expertise, or some kind of clinical expertise. Veterans Affairs needs to know a lot about government programs and veterans VA services and things. So one is that because there's scarce resources of those people, conservation agent is another one. The other thing is if we only need someone 20 hours a week or 18 hours a week, it often becomes an unbenefited position. And so what happens is someone that needs a job will take it, but they'll only stay for 6 months till they find another job, because we really need to give people health care benefits, the full benefits. So what regionalization is, the programs I mentioned earlier where we're sharing an agent or sharing a town employee, we pay full benefits and we split the cost of the salary for the person and their benefits over 2 or 3 towns. So it causes there to be less turnover and people to be more satisfied too. So it's qualitative and the cost.
Oh, for sure, because you get retention and you get the expertise stays in town. They build on that. But it makes a lot of sense to me. And Sherburne's doing a lot. There's one fairly recently that I was involved in a little bit. That the town voted to establish the North Sherburne Water District. We did the home rule, which was passed. So tell us about how's that going to work? Because that's just starting, and tell us a little bit about where that's going and how it's going to help the towns around here as well.
Well, it's actually the water. I'll get a little bit ahead of the water district. The important thing is we're building affordable housing in town. We've got a proposal to build a total of 188 affordable housing units, or 2 complexes, 1 apartment, 1 condos, The apartments will all count as affordable. There's 120 of them. And then there's, I think it's 88 condos, of which 10% will be affordable. So the big advantage is we're trying to get more affordable and more diverse housing in town. And in order to do that, Sherburne's problem with development is we all have private wells and septic systems. So what we're doing, what we put together with a lot of help, particularly from Marion Neutra, who's also on the select board, we built a North Sherburne Water District. We're starting to set that up now, but we'll be getting water. We negotiated with the mayor of Framingham and Framingham to get our water supply from Framingham, and we're going to send the effluent, the septic effluent, to Natick. So, and they're both part of MWRA services. So we will not be affecting the resources, natural groundwater resources in town by putting a large complex there, but we'll support affordable housing. And it's also going to be, we're now thinking the MWB RTA, regional transportation hub, that's very close to the Natick train station. So the water district will be set up. The builder of the development will run the main pipelines to that project, and we'll negotiate. We'll create a water board, and the town of Sherburne will be running the water board with appointed and selected from different groups in town. And there's enough capacity that some of the abutters in the area need water from the district. They can also do it. So it won't come all the way to the center of town. It'll come down Kendall on Coolidge in the northwestern part of town. So it'll, ease the problem on the groundwater and provide affordable housing. So it's really a win-win for the community and housing that can be accessible with public transportation.
And a great example of cooperation between communities.
Yeah, it's very, very much so. Yeah.
Which
took a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right.
We had 2 or 3 years worth of iterations on it. But.
Oh, good. So Jeff, we've got a couple minutes, and I want to ask about something that hasn't been regionalized as much, although maybe there's been some ad hoc efforts, and it's related to the cost of special education. And let me just be clear, I certainly believe that every child should get what they need. So let's start with that premise. But it's a real constraint on small towns. Who pays for it? I think the state should be doing more. I actually filed legislation that the state would be paying more of its share. But I'm always wondering, what's the potential for collaboration around special ed? Can we set up centers of excellence so in a region, depending on the needs, kids may be sent to maybe 1 or 2 towns over? Right now, some of them are getting sent an hour and a half away. It's costing $100,000, $200,000. Now, sometimes those might be needs that can't be met anywhere else, and I understand that. But in talking with people, it seems like if there was more collaboration, there's potential for savings there. And I've actually, and also keeping the kids closer to the hometown they live in, I actually have been contemplating a regional earmark to study this, and maybe it's something we could do in a year or two. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this. I know it's a big part of the budgets, and it comes up a lot when I have discussions about state funding, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing on the budgets, because I was on the finance, it's really, the problem with it is unpredictable, because you could have a student who just moved in town has special needs, and you can't, it's not like a linear change, it's kind of a step function change, but I actually step back. My biggest concern about the special education students' needs is the needs to be with their friends. Ignoring the costs, and even ignoring the education part, their neighbors or their friends, or they're in, some kind of activity group and their friends, and if we send them out of district to go to school, it meets their educational needs and development needs better maybe, but they're not with their friends.
Sure.
So I feel that that's the first line of focus, is we can keep them here, not for cost reasons, but so that they can build sustaining friendships, which if you're having trouble in school anyway, we learned that in the COVID period. A lot of the COVID students felt displaced because they weren't seeing their friends daily. They were seeing them on Zoom or something, but they weren't interacting. So the biggest part about SPED to me is trying to keep the student body intact, and then provide them with the educational resources they need. And so I think if there's ways that we can share it, it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical location. It could be a counselor in a particular type of learning disability that could be shared between 3 towns.
For sure.
There might be a way you could do that. And I'm certainly not an educational specialist, but I very much like to have the students stay in district for their benefit, for their family's benefit.
I think that's important, and if we can't do that, better that they only have to go 10 minutes than 2 hours and they're not on a bus for 4 hours, which is also a drag too. But I hear your point. I mean, I think that the social aspects and community aspects of education are just as important as the other things.
And it might be this local, they might be able to, do, physics and math in their classroom and maybe have a special class in the afternoon at a different facility.
No, which is that'd be an interesting conversation to have, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, literally, I was saying I can be 10 minutes to any of 4 towns in my district.
Yeah.
So it could be a half day here, but then a half day still with your peers. So all kind of permutations we could maybe look at. But right now, I know a lot of them are just getting sent far away at a big expense, which kind of defeats all those things we just talked about. So it's just an interesting thing. I think we should look at some point and see.
Sure, and it's my ignorance. I didn't have a chance to call the superintendent of schools, but it's probably likely that they already have either programs being launched or a vision.
There's been some informal conversations, I know, at several schools. And the other thing is, and I did file legislation, again, not that I don't want kids to get what they need, but a couple years in a row, a division of the executive branch charged towns a 14% increase on special ed tuition, and then 5%, so 20% in 2 years. Well, what do we say to cities and towns in Massachusetts? You can only raise anything that you spend by 2.5%, right? So why can the state with impunity do that to cities? And I don't like that. So I put in legislation that says, okay, here's the deal. You can charge towns 2.5% increase. And if you have an argument that the schools need more, I'm not against that, but let's take that from the fair share money that we have as a legitimate expense for education. So those kinds of things.
Students in the Tri-Valley also, too, there's a lot of different educational offerings.
That's right, for sure. I was just with some students this morning, actually, who built a gazebo. That's great. So Jeff, we're about to wrap up, but any closing thoughts that you wanted to add, to share around this topic?
Yeah, actually, I like to recharacterize the topic, James, because I don't view it as a cost savings opportunity. I view it as delivering better services to the town. If we have a person who's an expert conservation agent or board of health agent or a sustainability coordinator, they're hard to find talented people like that. And if you can't offer them benefits and they keep changing, you're probably not getting consistent services to town. So I think the regionalization, most importantly, is about delivering the best possible services to the town. And in doing so, the regionalization shares the cost that makes it more affordable. But even if you had all the money, you couldn't afford to lose the quality of the care. So that's what I think is really, it's not all about cost.
No, I hear that point. Even if there was no gain, there's still a benefit to sharing resources and time and energy.
We've got some terrific people.
You get more expertise.
It's hard now to find, like a conservation agent is a very hard person to find these days. They're in high demand.
And the reality is, we're not cities that have huge deployment of staff that they can trade and share. We're not county government.
We don't have a county government like some states.
That's right. So, and that's where they have those opportunities to share expertise. And as you say, sometimes it might save money, but not always. But that's okay. At least we're getting good quality services in the town. So it's exciting what Sherburne's doing. I'm looking forward to working with Sherburne in the years ahead on other things that we can explore. But so far so good, and I'll look forward to continuing working with you on these issues.
Absolutely, you're stuck with me. But if I get reelected, but kidding aside, we really appreciate your support and Becca Roush's support also. The town of Sherburne is very fortunate to have such strong representatives and ones that know our town, not just casually. You're here often, and I talk to Becca often. So the state representatives that we have are very supportive of the small town.
I appreciate that so much. I do enjoy coming here. And thank you all for joining us today. Again, just on 2 quick notes. If you have an idea for a future show, please be in touch with my office. Again, it's james.arena-derosa@ma.gov, and they're going to put that on the screen, as well as my phone number for the office. But perhaps more important, if anybody needs help or has a question or needs government services, please contact my office. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not sure if it's a state issue or local who can deal with it. Call me anyway. Because what I always say is, if it's a state issue and we can help you navigate state government, we are happy to intervene and try to help you out if we can. If it happens to be a local issue, we'll put you in touch with some of your town officials, depending on the question. And likewise, if it's more of a national congressional issue, we'll put you in touch with constituent services there. So even if you're not quite sure if it's us, feel free to call me anytime. It is part of the role that we play. And again, I've been enjoying serving the town of Sherburne and look forward to continuing to serve you in the years ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you.